Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Gray Matter. We've got a really great guest for you today, someone who I would call a friend of the show. He's been here a couple of times before, but there are always new things to talk about with this guest. And just by way of tie in, people in Canada were very shocked and dismayed recently to see Dr. Teresa Tam and Dr. Bonnie Henry, who are two really COVID villains, people who engineered a lot of the harms that were done to Canadians during the COVID-19 lockdowns and vaccine mandate period, receive the Order of Canada, which is one of the highest public recognitions that can happen in Canadian society. And sort of set against that are big changes that are happening in the United States under the tenure of RFK Jr., where he's appointed people like Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who I had the pleasure of getting to know, and this gentleman who's on the show today, Dr. Robert Malone, who's recently received an appointment to assist with, let's call it the rehabilitation of confidence in public health in the United States. Welcome back to the show, Dr. Malone. It's great to see you again.
Well, thanks a lot for having me on and shout out and greetings to my friends in Canada. My heart goes out to you. Uh, it there's a lot of damage that's been done, a lot of injustice, and certainly Canadians have had their share of it. I'm sorry for that. I wish I could do something about it.
Yeah. Well, I think you are. I mean, we're everyone in Canada is hoping that the work that you and others are doing in the United States is going to have, let's say, a spin-off effect into places like Canada and other parts of the world. We're all praying for that. Before we dive into and find out more about that and the work that you're doing, and also to talk about your books, let's go to our framing aphorisms as we always do. The first one is from Tucker Carlson, who said this about one of your books, which is called Lies My Government Told Me. Folks, if you haven't read this book, you really must. It's one of the key things that have been written about COVID-19. Tucker Carlson said this. He said, Dr. Robert Malone may be the single most qualified person on planet Earth to discuss COVID vaccination. Why? Because he helped create the mRNA technology behind the COVID vaccines. We think he has a right to speak. Next, from Leonard Horowitz, who said, the greatest lie ever told is that vaccines are safe and effective. And of course, our guest has had a lot to say about that publicly. Next, from a friend of the show, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, whom I got to know very well when he was an expert witness in a case in Alberta. He said, Anthony Fauci's performance has been an abdication of responsibility. I expect Dr. Malone would agree. And finally, from Robert F. Kennedy, who presides over MAHA, Make Alberta Healthy, Make America Healthy Again.
That was Freudian.
Yeah. The pharmaceutical industry is, in my view, a criminal cartel. The four companies that make all of the 72 vaccines now mandated for our children, all of them in the and their other products have paid billions in criminal penalties for lying to doctors, for defrauding regulators, for falsifying science, for killing hundreds of thousands of people. That's from the United States Secretary of Health and Human Services. Who do we have in the show today? Well, I couldn't go through all of his resume. That would take a whole show, but he is the inventor of the 9 original mRNA vaccine patents, which were originally filed in 1989, including both the idea of mRNA vaccines and the original proof of principle experiments and RNA transfection. He has close to 100, probably many more than 100 peer-reviewed publications by now, which have been cited over 12,000 times. And since January of 2020, Dr. Malone has been leading a large team focused on clinical research, design, drug development, computer modeling, and mechanisms of action, repurposed drugs for the treatment of COVID-19. And Dr. Malone is the medical director of the Unity Project, a group of 300 organizations across the U.S. standing against mandated COVID vaccines for children. He's also the president of the Global COVID Summit, an organization of over 16,000 doctors and scientists committed to speaking truth to power about COVID pandemic research and treatment. Most recently, he's been appointed by RFK Jr. to assist with the grand project of rehabilitating public health in the United States. So, what I'd like to do, Dr. Malone, is maybe take a step back and maybe ask the question, how does Robert Malone, or maybe if you're known as Bobby Malone back in the day, come off the farm as a young man, deciding that, you know what, you're going to go back to school, and you set your sights really high. You decide you're going to become a medical doctor. And to many young people, this may seem like a really incredible decision, very daunting idea. But I'm interested to know, um, what was that decision making? That shows the power of a decision. But you probably had no idea at the time that you were going to become this really made guy, this Dr. Robert Malone who would do all these amazing things. But it started with a young man who just wanted to come off the farm and become a doctor. Do you want to talk about maybe kind of that origin story and what you set out to do in the beginning and how that kind of led you through all of the many trials and tribulations and successes in your career so far?
So I guess that story kind of starts with uh, my decision to marry my wife now of 46 years, uh, Dr. Jill Glasspool Malone. She's a doctor now. She wasn't then. We were both dirt poor. Her father kind of became a mentor for me. I'd been pretty much both of us had been rejected by my parents, and uh, I had gone through in my younger years up to my early 20s working in a variety of, kind of manual labor positions. Jill and I ran a small restaurant, in the foothills of Tahoe for tourists. So I flipped plenty of burgers and steaks on the grill, and then I worked as a carpenter, and a, kinda team supervisor on a big, construction project in Santa Barbara, which was our home area where we came from. And then, uh, decided that I really didn't wanna spend the rest of my life, working with carpenters and doing that kind of work. I wanted to do more intellectual work, and so I went to the local city college, it's all I could afford, in Santa Barbara, and put myself through 2 years, and to my surprise, a really great surprise, I got straight A's. And I
Wow.
was a computer science major. I became head of the student body, vice president and president, and was awarded upon graduation a number of things, including top computer science student. And I made the decision that I really didn't want to spend the rest of my life in a basement staring at a TV monitor as a programmer, a coder, we would call it now. And so, as I like to say, I decided to go into the biologic sciences trying to seek a medical degree and earn a tiny fraction of what I would have earned if I'd stayed as a computer scientist in the early '80s. So bad decision there, but both of my sons ended up computer science, senior computer engineers. They're both doing just fine, married, have their own houses, blah blah blah. So they they went ahead and took that pathway, I think in part because they saw what Jill and I experienced in academia, in medical academia, and, decided they wanted nothing to do with that. Uh, but, uh, I so I completed my 2-year degree, with straight A's and went to UC Davis, which is the ag school for California. And while I was there, in my beginning year, of course, I was on student aid, scratching, taking loans, doing everything I can to make ends meet. We didn't have any kids then. Uh, and one of the pathways was that you could get subsidized work. So basically, pay for work if you go to work in a laboratory. And I, interviewed for a position in a breast cancer research laboratory in the School of Pathology, as the Department of Pathology within the School of Medicine, and, really met my 2 main great mentors, in that context, uh, and was taken in, became a total lab rat. Uh, that's really where I learned science on a really daily and a weekly basis. I was hammered. What's the hypothesis? What's the positive control? What's the negative control? What's your interpretation? Just bang, 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 bang. From a couple of guys, one in particular, Bob Cardiff, who was really quite a serious actor, formerly Armed Forces Institute of Pathology, and eventually became department chair. The other one went on to found the he had been recruited from USC Cancer Center, which he had founded, Murray Gardner, and then uh, was a key component in building out the Center for Comparative Medicine at the Non-Human Primate Research Laboratory at Davis that, frankly, was at the center of the gain of function research. So that's a read ahead. I'm not very proud of that. I wish they had done that. Having to do with the COVID product and actually
Mhm.
trained the woman that's known as the Bat Lady at Wuhan. So that was the environment that I found myself in, working on breast cancer and a retrovirus model of breast cancer in mice, mouse memory tumor virus. I completed my bachelor's in biochemistry, and I was not only I don't think it was as much my success in the lab. I did get a manuscript out, but it was my commitment. It was just hard work, and I kind of brought the
Mhm.
ethic of a farm worker, carpenter, general laborer of,
Right.
get it done. The Red Green Show, for instance, is an example of that attitude in Canada. If I could fix it with
Right.
duct tape, I probably would have. And so I brought that attitude of can do and commitment to hard work to drive me forward. And I always had in the back of my mind, well, if I didn't make it as an MD, I couldn't get in because it was really hard then in the 70s. Uh,
Right.
that I could fall back on being a molecular biologist and doing laboratory bench research. And, I've always been kind of flexible and always landed on my feet. But I was so committed and productive and hardworking that my mentors wrote really super strong letters of recommendation, and that got me a scholarship to Northwestern University in Chicago, and then put me on the track to eventually the discoveries at the Salk Institute and UC San Diego during the research phase of my work, and then my world kind of exploded. So this hasn't been this isn't my first rodeo of having some degree of fame or notoriety. I
Mhm.
previously was a whistleblower, kind of a central whistleblower in speaking out about what happened during the infamous Jesse Gelsinger death. This was the gene therapy death at UPenn,
Mhm.
and kind of
Right.
destroyed my academic career then. But I learned from that that people respect you for taking a principled stand, and you can recover from basically being blacklisted in academe. So you can maintain your integrity and speak truth to power, and you'll take a hit. But as I like to say, you still own your soul. You by doing that, it may not be the most lucrative thing to do, but I'm of the opinion that, owning your soul is more important than having a fat wallet, and, I
Right.
also, uh so I've been through that, I've done a bunch of career changes, within my space, and then all of this happened. I basically was heading down the ramp, towards retirement. I'm now 65, heading on 66 this year, and, my wife and I have had small farms ever since, pretty much. Uh, this is our sixth small farm. One we have now in Virginia, we literally homesteaded. It was raw hay land. The buildings that were here, including this was an old pig shed built in 1945 that we rehabilitated, the studio here. Uh, the um, So we now have 3 houses on the property, 3 barns, lots of fences. We had to put in the well. We had to put in septic. At first, Jill and I lived in an office trailer, and commuted to the local health club when we wanted to shower, brought our water in, and used a porta potty. And that was 7 years ago. So we gradually, took that same attitude of we can do this. We can
Mhm.
build it out and transform this raw land into it's really heading towards botanical garden plus horse farm. And we actually
Mhm.
ship Lusitano horses into Canada fairly frequently.
Wonderful. Really shows the power of a decision, doesn't it? And I hope that young people are listening to this and watching this because I know that many of them are struggling with, well, what am I going to do with my life? And when they hear this story, a story like yours, which is hardly an overnight success story, but just someone was very driven, very decisive, and willing to work extremely hard to achieve what they wanted to what they set it to achieve. It really is a remarkable story, and so I'm glad that we got to share this with our viewers and listeners. Folks, we're talking with Dr. Robert Malone, who's a scientist and author. He's authored 2 books now. "Lies My Government Told Me," which is one of the, as I said, one of the great books on COVID-19, and also more recently, he's authored a book with his wife Jill called "Psy War," which is again a brilliant book, almost, I would say, a sequel to Lies My Government Told Me, kind of refining some of the features of the first book. Dr. Malone, I had the pleasure of getting to know Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, who, like you, is now part of the RFK Jr. team in public health in the United States in a case that where he was an expert witness when we were fighting lockdown measures in Alberta. And he said something during the course of that trial that really struck me, and, I'd like to get you to comment on it. He said that the most lasting feature of the COVID-19 pandemic, and especially of lockdowns, was the loss of confidence in public health. He said that if we had a virus that came along that was as dangerous as Ebola and as, that could be as, communicated as easily as, to say, the common cold, and if public health announced that to people, at least half the population would disregard it. They wouldn't believe it. And it seems to me what's happening in the United States is people like yourself and RFK Jr. and Dr. Bhattacharya and others who were really vilified during COVID-19 uh, and censored, are trying to change all of that and really trying to rehabilitate confidence in public health. Would you agree with that?
That's the goal, or one of the goals. Really, the true objective of the Make America Healthy Again movement. And I should add, your bio sketch was a little out of date. Just not to nitpick. Uh, the Unity Project is now gone. It lived its
Mm,
lifespan. COVID is largely past. Now we're arguing over the damages, largely. Uh, but the Make
mhm.
America Healthy Again movement is a really bipartisan initiative. That's what made it so powerful during the last election and perhaps
Mhm.
tipped the scales in terms of voting in some states, some swing states, towards President Trump. So, what's the essence of MAHA or the Make America Healthy Again movement? This is an essay I think I have to write in the next couple of days because it's been on my mind. The artifacts that you see are things like taking food dyes, the petroleum-based food dyes out of the food stream, particularly cereals, etcetera, but, the entire kind of processed food industry. Things that, as I recall, Canada doesn't have a lot of those synthetic dyes in their cereals, for example. Your Fruit Loops are not as bright and shiny as our Fruit Loops are. Uh, and likewise your Skittles, apparently, because you use natural dyes. But these dyes are associated with a
Mm,
variety of adverse events or sicknesses. Let's call them just that. And there are a number of other
mhm,
things in our food supply, particularly in our processed foods, our highly processed foods, that are getting attention, seed oils being one, and that there are efforts under the banner of MAHA to remove those things. So those are kind of artifacts that we can all see that are fairly high profile. And then there's the group that I'm affiliated with now. And by the way, it's a voluntary appointment by the federal government. We get a total of our stipends for meetings of the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, or ACIP, are $250 a day. So obviously, I did this for the money, uh, and that was facetious. Just I know sarcasm doesn't play well on the internet. Uh, um, so I that's the position. But what's significant about the ACIP, which is it advises it's a federal chartered federal advisory committee that advises the director of the CDC. That's all it's really supposed to do. But it's developed outsized influence. Really, it's batting or it's boxing above its weight class, let's say. Uh, in
right.
part because some federal legislation gives it certain powers to make uh, decisions about the use of vaccines, the standard of care that gets
Mhm,
propagated throughout the United States because the states generally defer to the feds. I don't think they should. That's my opinion. Is I'm a states' rights guy, but that's the way things have been, and that includes the Vaccines for
mhm,
Children program, which, by the way, products that are in the VFC, the Vaccines for Children program, get legal indemnity. In other words, you can't sue the vaccine companies, much like you couldn't sue the vaccine companies during COVID.
right,
Long-standing
right,
policy.
mhm,
And the ACIP is delegated the authority from Congress to make decisions about which vaccines are recommended to be placed onto that program. So ACIP has over time kind of had mission creep, got more power than I think it really should, but that's what this is all about. And ACI the what happened was that Bobby Kennedy decided to retire the prior membership of ACIP, which was 17 people,
mm,
and appoint first 8, but one couldn't meet the new standards for conflict of interest, so now it's only 7 persons to serve in their stead. And, so we have the unfortunate position now of being hated by everybody. It seems the base
you should be
of
used to that by now.
yeah. Well, I think that's part of why Bobby appointed me, is he knew that I could put on my armor and go to battle. But uh, there is howls of indignation, and this is an overused term, but it applies. Uh, um, a sense of existential dread uh, that somehow the vaccine industry is going to collapse now, and children are
Right,
going to die consequent to the ACIP rethinking the childhood vaccine schedule. And
right,
so the pharmaceutical industries and the various American professional associations per led in particular by the American Academy of Pediatrics, the same group that advocates for gender reassignment surgery, just to say, in the United
mhm,
States, they all see this as truly an existential crisis, that, this is the world is gonna come to an end, henny penny, the sky is falling, and, uh and these people, the way that we've been portrayed in media is that we're all a bunch of crazy anti-vaxxers with no experience. The problem is, for with that narrative that we are highly experienced. I've spent 30 years in vaccine development. I've got a lot of notches on my gun relating to that. You mentioned Ebola, including the Merck Ebola vaccine,
Yeah.
that I was really at the
Right.
tip of the spear on that. And, so it's a narrative that really doesn't have merit, but they continue to pursue it. Uh, I was just, as I was waiting to log on here, I get these little Google reports about things that I'm in the news for, and I was looking at the latest, attack from NPR, our national public radio.
Ah,
So that's
right.
we we, um so that's what all the churn is about at the moment, and
Mhm, mhm,
the
mhm,
media attacks have been almost as coordinated and comprehensive, uh, over the last month and a half, both at in particular, I seem to be catnip for the press, uh, and so they
mhm.
often mention, Dr. Robert Malone, as well as, of course, Secretary Kennedy, in these attack pieces,
Yeah,
uh, much as they did back in the day, over the last 5 years. So it's
right.
it's, um, it's more the same, and it's never very fun, but,
Mhm.
along the lines of what we were talking about before, my background, I absolutely refuse to allow myself to be framed as a victim. That's another thing that's really
Right.
common in the culture right now, talking about young people is self-victimization and,
Mhm.
the promotion of
Right.
the logic of self-victimization. I'm not a victim. Uh, I because of
No.
this, I've been catapulted into, uh, really national and global prominence. I didn't seek that. It's
Right.
not my objective,
Right.
but it happened because I was committed to what Matthias Desmet calls truth speech. And, in a
Mhm, mhm,
time in which, one of the narratives is, that we're moving into a period of, uh, a reputation economy where communication,
mhm.
ideas, etcetera, the my wife likes to call them dead media, with their talking heads, that will mouth whatever today's propaganda line is. That business model is failing. People have particularly young people, you're talking to young people here, particularly young people have
Mhm.
become very disillusioned with that, and they're seeking
Yeah. Yeah.
genuineness, and they're seeking honesty and integrity, and, suddenly I find myself, by just being myself and speaking my truth without a lot of embellishment and trying really hard uh, not to allow too much drama to creep into what I'm saying. There's many
Mhm.
people that, have become, forgive me, drama queens. That's kind of their brand often in social media is, "Oh my god," another version of "the sky is falling." It sells on social media over the short term.
Right.
It kinda destroys your
Mhm.
credibility over the long term. And, uh, so
Yeah.
so by taking this position, I've found myself, uh, having unexpected influence at age 65. This is just bizarre. Uh, and, uh, it is. I mean, I didn't seek it. It just happened. What did happen, frankly, you're seeking some of the stories, the backstories, but, when I went on the Dark Horse podcast with Steve Kirsch and Brett Weinstein, and then some other smaller stuff, and then, the hammer dropped, with Joe Rogan. And by the way,
Right.
fun
Mhm.
fact, 2 days before I went to get that interview and Joe Rogan, somehow inexplicably, simultaneously, I got deplatformed by both Twitter and LinkedIn. I'm still permanently banned by LinkedIn.
Right. Yes.
So it certainly
Wow.
there is the appearance that somebody was gathering intelligence, but I can't prove that. But then Rogan happened. Google actively edited search results for things like mass formation psychosis. Uh, um,
Right. Mhm.
the backstory everybody knows about Neil Young saying he was going to withdraw his song list, and he did for a while from Spotify because Joe
Right.
Rogan had Malone on, which, as did Joni
Mhm.
Mitchell. I was a big fan of Neil Young and Joni Mitchell. I can't even listen to their music anymore. Uh, and so that's what got the press, that's what got the attention. But the backstory, as documented by investigation in the U.S. House of Representatives, what really happened was that Coca Cola complained to the Global Alliance for Responsible Media, otherwise known as GARM, which is created by the World
Right.
Economic Forum, uh, which
Mhm.
basically represents all the major global advertisers. And
Right.
GARM
Mhm.
attacked Spotify and said, "We are no longer going to allow people to advertise on Spotify because Dr. Malone said naughty things on Joe Rogan." Uh, and the compromise that came out of that was that this little banner, like they have on cigarettes, where it says, the Surgeon General has determined that this will cause cancer. Well, all the podcasts that say anything about COVID in the United States or any kind of source of information now has this little banner recommending that you go to the CDC for your information about COVID. So that was the ending compromise, but
Mhm.
I became persona non grata with Joe Rogan. I still haven't been on again. He wrote to he DM'd me through X the other day saying, "We should have you on again as for Victory Tour," because he had made these
Really?
statements.
You
Yeah,
should.
he made these statements that, everything that Malone's like with Woody Harrelson, everything Malone said was true, blah, 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 but still. So I wrote back to him, "Yeah, we could talk about Porsche cars," because he's a big Porsche enthusiast, as am I, but I never heard back from him. So I will, I just that happened. But what
Yeah.
did happen was that uh, Steve Kirsch had advised me to open up and start publishing on Substack.
Mhm.
And when I got deplatformed, a lot of the people that had been following me on Twitter and LinkedIn sought me out on Substack. So
I
suddenly
was one of them. I still
my
follow your
Substack
Substack.
account exploded. Malone.news. We started building these 2 books by serializing them on Substack that you mentioned. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mhm.
um, and so, uh, um, now, I've destroyed my consulting business that I'd built up over 20 years by speaking out. I don't get any work through that anymore. Uh, and I used to use LinkedIn as one way to recruit uh, new customers, but that's gone. But, that pales in comparison to things that have been done to various Canadian physicians. So I'm grateful. It
Yes.
could have been a
Mhm.
lot worse. Can
Yeah.
always be worse.
Mhm.
And,
Mhm.
but Substack is now what sustains us. It's only a small fraction of our subscribers actually pay. They pay 5 or $6 a month. I don't remember what the number is, but it results in us having a very decentralized donor base. And, uh, the books don't make any real money. That's the truth. You don't make any money author anymore, but it was important to get them out.
Mhm.
Substack is what,
Yeah.
feeds the horses, and, keeps things running here. So that's a my wife had, uh, Dr. Jill had said to me for years, "You should start writing. You're such a good writer. You should, instead of
Mhm.
writing grants and contracts, you should be
She was
writing."
right.
And so this forced us into that, and it's going just fine. So, it's a good thing to be doing
Yeah.
in your
It sure
50s.
is. Yeah.
So, I guess that's another
Folks we're
lesson
talking with
for your young
yeah.
listeners
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
stay agile, land on your feet,
Yeah.
and just because you get a setback, it may actually turn out to be a good thing. You may think it's a setback
Yeah.
today, but if you stay on top of things and you adapt, you may find yourself in a better place than you would have been otherwise. That's certainly what's happened with us, and so I'm not a victim. I
Yeah,
can't complain.
that's
It's not
great
nice
advice.
having, the media say naughty things about you, but, uh, I continue to just go about my daily business and do my best, and, they basically end up looking like clowns. So that's just,
Mhm,
they're doing it to themselves. And, that's kinda how it's playing out with Bobby and with ACIP. The thing
mhm,
that they don't get, this kinda corporate media world that is very bicoastal, is that, uh, most of America has our backs, and,
mhm,
they're
mhm.
they're with us. So, I think we just kinda have to stay the course, don't get too excited, don't 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 fear, uh, um, these, naughty reporters, that don't even understand the fundamentals of science, and just stay the
Yeah,
course.
yeah. Folks, we're talking with Dr. Robert Malone, who's the author of 2 books, Lies My Government Told Me, which is, as I mentioned earlier, really an authoritative book on the COVID-19, especially vaccines, and also Psywar, a book that he wrote with his wife, Jill. One journalist or writer who isn't saying naughty things about you, Dr. Malone, is a lady named Sophia Carson. She wrote a recent piece that I read
Yes.
called calling you the apex predator of captured science.
That was that
And
was a
one of the
nice
things
turn of
that was a
phrase.
great piece, yeah, it really nice, and one of the things that surprised me when I read it is that apparently she was the one who approached you about this whole Bobby Kennedy thing, and at first you were lukewarm to it. In fact, you said, w "Forget it, why would I wanna do that?" But when you found out it was Bobby Kennedy, that
Well,
changed your mind.
so,
You wanna talk
a
about your
little more
thought process
backstory.
there and why you decided to do this?
Yeah, a
Yeah,
little more backstory. Uh,
sure.
Sophia is, um, a, uh, kind of a semi-celebrity important person within the Hollywood, LA world. She's a friend of
Right.
Bobby's. Uh,
Okay.
she's actually best friends with Bill Maher. Uh,
Okay.
so Sophia is not
Very funny
nobody.
guy. Mhm.
Yeah. She's
Yeah.
not nobody. She's been around the block a few times. Uh, Absolutely passionate bedrock supporter of Bobby Kennedy. And
Mhm.
I've known her for about 2 years now, and she's right. I had expressed that I really didn't want to. I live about an hour and a half south of the capital of DC. That's where my farm is.
Mhm.
And, so for instance, I'm gonna have to scoot up into DC. I just learned today on Friday to go meet with the, commissioner of the FDA. Um, uh,
Okay.
so I'm intentionally close enough that I can go in, but far enough that I don't have to deal with the traffic. And I absolutely do not want to live in DC. I don't want to be immersed in DC culture. I really I've been there, done that, spent plenty of time working for Beltway bandits and dealing with that world, and I don't like it very much. And, really did not want to have to go get a condominium in Rockville and, go work at the NIH or the FDA or whatever, for the next 4 years.
Right.
And so I early on, there was a lot of buzz around, well, who's gonna join the administration? Who's gonna take this job, that job, whatever. And, apparently my name was floated for various things, and I just didn't want any of those administrative jobs. I knew the people like,
Mhm.
Marty and Jay and Dr. Oz, and Bobby, of course, that are on the front lines in this are just taking incoming that makes what they're doing to me over the ACIP look like child's play. There was
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lawsuit filed against Bobby the other day, uh, by, virtually all the professional societies, over the determination that the COVID vaccine was going to be shared decision making for children as opposed to recommended. And so they filed a personal lawsuit
Mm,
against him as well as a lawsuit against the uh, HHS. I mean, this is just that's the new battleground in the United States, lawfare. So
yeah.
what
Lawfare,
these
right.
folks are up against is really quite wicked, and I knew that was going to be the case. There's a lot of uh, major conservative influencers in the area surrounding me, like the people that run CPAC, uh, are friends. Their farm is about 10 miles from here.
Hmm.
So I knew what that would be like. I didn't want it.
Right.
The opportunity came up to serve on the ACIP, which is just 3 meetings a year in theory. Then there's all of the subcommittee meetings, but it's way. I don't have to go live somewhere. I have to get on a cattle class seat on a jet to go down to Atlanta, which is an hour plane flight, no biggie. Uh, 3 times a
Hmm.
year to be in Atlanta, not my favorite city, for 2 days at a time. It's not that much of a hardship, and so when,
Right.
Bobby asked if I would do that, I was grateful, for the opportunity to serve my country, and, so that's what Sophia is talking about is that,
Mm,
I really did not and what it is it runs counter to the narrative that the reason why I did all this, and that was promoted by various people, that the reason why I was on the internet and on Bannon and Rogan and your podcast and all this other stuff is because I was seeking political power. And I
right.
was but this is not about
Yeah.
want
And
some juicy
yeah.
government.
And she says this about you. She
Yeah.
says this about you actually in the piece. I want to quote from this because she says this is why she calls you the apex predator of captured science. She says Robert Malone enters this phase not as a power hungry bureaucrat, but as a battle scarred general, equipped, tested, and unflinching. He knows how to fight. And more importantly, he fights not for power, but for truth. These those are very kind words. I'm sure you're not used to people saying that about you in the media, but I mean, she says because she's saying that that explains in large part why the people who don't want you to succeed are very worried about you because you mean what you say and you can't be but you've demonstrated you can't be bought off that you can't
That's
be
it.
made to say things that you don't believe in, right? And so that's why she calls you this apex predator. What does she mean by captured science? What does she mean by that? Or did the ones who are
So,
controlled that can be bought off?
so there's a variety of different ways that uh, academics and academic physicians and these medical associations can be and are compromised. And
Right.
so I've kind of been butting my head against this world for my entire career. Uh, um, uh, I didn't get the Nobel Prize. Uh, it went to people that came a decade after I did my work. Uh, um, and it was political. It was
Right.
explicitly said by the committee that they awarded the prize hoping that this would motivate people to take the vaccine. Uh,
Mm,
so that's just one example. With the
mhm,
modern academe in the United States is really super competitive. It's a pyramid. Uh, and there is a lot of ways that the current paradigms are enforced, and a
mm.
lot of ways that alternative explanations and paradigms are delegitimized and made very difficult to get funding, to get published. What we saw with COVID. with the corruption of the medical journals, for example, was just kind of the culmination, the most overt example that I've ever seen, and I've been through multiple outbreaks. This is not my first rodeo in this either, and, never seen anything as in your face as what we saw over the last few years. Propaganda, the censorship, uh,
Mhm.
the, duplicity, uh, the, harmonized reinforcement of false messages, which we might call lies. Uh, this was at a level never, and it was global, uh, and reinforced globally through purchasing of influencers, hence the second book, Psychological Warfare, uh, and kinda documenting the history of propaganda from Edward Bernays to the present, and
Right. Mhm.
deployment of, psychological warfare technology against citizens. Uh, and I'm absolutely convinced, and we saw a great artifact, demonstrating this the other day, absolutely convinced that the pharmaceutical industry has assimilated the tactics of psychological warfare as part of their current marketing. So this is,
Right.
the buying of influencers, manipulation of the internet, use of gang stalking, et cetera, even by some Canadians, I don't wanna name names, that were, uh, recruited to, be attack dogs, and got
Right.
a certain amount of fame for doing that, really outsized fame.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
um, so, uh, so that's the new landscape we find ourselves in, and,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
wherein, underpinning this, I think it's really useful to kinda try to allow yourself to recognize the deep trends that are underpinning a lot of these
Right.
phenomena that we see. And one of them is the logic that reality is subjective. The truth is a
Mhm.
matter of
Mhm.
feelings. That
Right.
um, uh, and this much of this is reinforced by and emerges from internet culture, where
Right.
and things like Dungeons and Dragons, not to pick on anybody, but where the idea that your the reality that you experience is unique to you and your truth, and that there is no subjective truth or no objective truth, only your personal experience of truth, and so that truth can be readily managed and manipulated through a variety of different mechanisms. And
Right. Mhm.
that's what where we're at right now. So if you're a, aggressive, up and coming, I want to buy my Porsche marketing guy, working for a big pharmaceutical company, why wouldn't you use those technologies? Why, of course you would. You'd be silly not to. Your competitors,
Mhm.
for promotion would be
Right.
using it. If you weren't using it, you might as well get on board. Uh,
Mhm.
So and then the government, is doing this. You guys in Canada are poster children, as is the UK with the 77th Brigade. Uh, for some
Right.
reason, the former crown colonies, uh, seem to have really been susceptible, except for India, uh, seem to have been
Right.
really susceptible to this kind of tech. And it's all been deployed on all of us, including by our militaries. I
Yeah.
mean, when I lecture on psychological warfare, I pull up a variety of press clippings from Canada, specifically discussing
Mhm.
how the military was used to deploy this psychological warfare stuff on its
This is
citizens.
quite true. Yeah, quite true.
And so,
Wha yeah, go ahead.
no, please.
I was gonna say, I've read your book, War, and there's a recent story which I wanted to ask you about because it seems to be an example of one of the dangers that you talk about of this, of how this propaganda works. and I don't wanna pick on this lady, but she's a Houston pediatrician who was recently terminated from her job, because she
There
was
not so
mocking Texas
recently. I
flood
know
victims
her well.
online, and
I
she
know her well.
yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a good example of somebody who I mean, she's a pediatrician, so obviously, has deeply cares about kids and their health. I guess we could take that as a given. Um, but was so caught up in the propaganda and the politicization and what we might call Trump derangement syndrome that she posts out something, where she says, "May all visitors, children, MAGA voters, and pets be safe and dry." And she
Oh, that
basically
one.
says, uh,
Yeah.
"Yeah, may people get what they voted for." And, like 80 people so far, over the weekend died. And I thought this is when I saw this story, it made me think of your book, Dr. Malone, because you talk about in the book how even really smart, educated people like this doctor, who's probably a nice lady, but she gets so caught up in this propaganda that it actually corrupts her thinking and makes her really think and say vile things. And I want to put this in the context of the work you're doing now, because you said, you're part of a bipartisan movement. How do you think there's a way forward to get past sort of this deep political division, this sort of left-right, dichotomy, this push-pull, thing that's going on so that, we can get past it? Because, when you have people like pediatricians saying these things, almost wishing for the deaths of people, saying, "You got what you deserved, because you don't support climate change." It really does illustrate what you talk about in your book, doesn't it?
Yeah, so now I understand the case you're talking about. Uh, and the context was
Yeah.
the recent flooding, uh, in Texas,
Yes. Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
horrendous loss of life, in particular in a children's camp that was flooded.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
just last night, I was in DC talking to people that had direct first person experience. One couple that were gonna send their daughter to that camp, but something
Mhm.
happened, and she ended up not going, and but now her friends that were at that camp are dead. So,
Yeah.
the narrative that that pediatrician was supporting was that this particular flooding was in some way attributable to a failure to address uh, anthropomorphic climate change, not climate change in general, but
Right.
climate change due to human
Mhm.
activity or cow farts or whatever.
Right.
I'm not sure. Um,
Yeah.
but the the problem with that's a false narrative because
Right.
but she had been propagandized, as you say. But very similar flooding in the same location. What's happened is that area has grown quite a bit. It's on a known floodplain where a similar flood occurred like 15 or 20 years ago. So this has nothing to
Mhm.
do with recent politics having to do with human caused climate change. It had to do with the idiosyncrasies of that part of Texas. Uh, and um,
Right.
the problems with flash flooding in
Mhm.
in the Southwest, in particular of the United States, where often you have prolonged dry spells, and then suddenly you'll have a deluge, which is what carves all those lovely canyons and things. But um,
Right.
you don't want to be downstream when the big thunderstorm happens. So
Right.
uh, is yeah that this um, I'm not an expert in the psychology of this, but I'm fascinated by it, as I take it you are,
Right.
which is why I
Yeah.
latched on to Matthias Desmond and his theories, and those of
Yes.
many others. I, like many of us,
Mhm.
I think those of us that think about what has transpired during the last 5 years, are deeply troubled by what we observe around us in terms of the fragmentation of
Mhm.
our culture. And you ask the important
Right.
question, can it be fixed, basically? And, my answer
Mhm.
is, I don't know. Uh, I'm doing
Yeah.
I I all I'm doing what I can, which is a drop in the bucket, but I'm doing it. I'm not shirking from it. I'm not hiding.
Mhm.
I chose, for
Right.
instance, not to comment on the Gaza conflict because I knew from the outset that that was going to be a battle of two of the most advanced psychological warfare units in the world, uh, Hamas and
Mm,
the IDF. And it
right.
would quickly become impossible to discern truth in that battlescape.
Mm.
So I just
You
stayed
certainly
out
were
of that.
right.
I didn't have any expertise, uh, and I'm really glad I didn't step in a pile of hot steaming you know what by just standing aside. Uh, um,
Mm,
the corporate corporate media, as I said, my wife calls it dead media, is truly in death throes now.
yeah.
We reach over 10 million views a month on our Substack. We're running circles around CNN with a total staff of me,
Incredible.
my wife, and an assistant. Uh, um, so media's corporate media is dying, and uh, as part of their death throes, they are needing to sensationalize more and more, drive more and more
Mm,
division, uh, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, and will continue to do so. Uh, CNN has the sense of Bobby Kennedy as an existential threat for corporate media is profound and deep and true. If he withdraws
right.
pharmaceutical industry advertising revenue from television, organizations like CNN will go bankrupt, and they've acknowledged that.
Mm,
So for them, this is a this is the last battle. They've got to win this one,
right.
or they're
Yeah.
unemployed.
Stakes are high. Mhm,
Yeah, and
mhm.
so
Incredible.
they're driving these wedges. Uh, the Both political parties in the United States are increasingly obsolete, uh,
Mm,
and captured by special interests and insider gamesmanship, etc. And for instance, Elon Musk is going to launch a new political party. Functionally, Trump
right.
has. Uh, we're going through the next decade and maybe the next couple of years are going to be a period of profound transition. Um, and then we have the effects of artificial intelligence on top of that. As the cherry on the cake,
Mhm.
um, is just going to
Yeah.
change everything. So,
Mhm, mhm.
what what comes out the other side? Do we get the term that I like about all this is splintering or splinterification. So the splintering of the internet is something that's happening very actively right now. Splintering of the social
Right.
consciousness, political sphere. We're being and so this is very convenient uh, if you happen to be somebody who uh, benefits from the collapse of existing social structures. So divide and conquer.
Right. Mhm, mm.
And
Right. Mhm.
until people wake up and recognize they have uh, more similarities than they have differences, and refuse to allow third parties to divide them synthetically, um, then uh, because something like 60% of the 20 to 30% of the populace is highly suggestible and highly susceptible to propaganda.
Right.
20 to
Mhm,
30% is
mhm.
very resistant. They're the free thinkers, and the rest kind of go whichever way the wind blows. Uh, because that's the history of the world. That's history of humankind, going back to Plato and the allegory of the cave. Uh, um,
Right. Mhm.
that this is not going to change, and uh, our is a reality based uh, objectivity and comity, not comedy, but but
Right.
you know, willingness to seek common ground. Will that prevail,
Right.
or will the divisiveness prevail? I think it's up to
Mhm.
really up to the common man and woman.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what is the world you want to live in? What is the world you want to give to your children? And it's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
not to sensationalize it, but do you want to live in the world of Mad Max?
Yeah.
Personally, I don't.
Yeah.
Uh, um, but there are trends towards balkanization and warlords. Like,
Mm.
and one of those trends is seventh generation warfare. The propaganda is fifth generation warfare.
Right.
Sixth
Right.
generation warfare is the targeted hypersonic missiles and that tech, targeted munitions. Seventh generation warfare is drone warfare and robotic warfare. And drone
Right.
robotic warfare powered by artificial intelligence, which is really what's being pioneered in the Ukraine, by the way, uh, is is what we're heading towards. And is that the world you want to live in? And one of the things about it
Yeah.
is that if you are a, a wealthy person within a region, you can buy or set up manufacturing because these drones are relatively cheap. It's not like, big B-2 stealth bomber or whatever,
Right.
uh,
Mhm.
or a big aircraft carrier. As we saw with the Ukrainian action against the Russian bomber fleet, this is cheap,
Right.
and that means that local warlords can set up drone armies and for not too much money, and we can move towards regional balkanization, driven by uh, um, mercenary armies and local
Mhm.
uh, drone and uh, robotic armies
Mhm.
that will make the even the concept of the nation state obsolete if we don't pay attention.
Sounds like a return to sounds like a return to feudalism. But, folks,
Or
we've had
a
the
kind of,
pleasure of
15th, 16th century Italy, uh,
right. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
time that gave
The
us,
city states. Yeah.
Machiavelli's Prince. Uh, that
Yes.
that
Yes.
that's
Folks,
kinda
we've
where the vectors are going right now.
mhm. Folks, we've had the pleasure of spending the last hour with Dr. Robert Malone, author, scientist, and now one of the authors, hopefully, of a new age, a new era in public health in the United States. You really must check out his two books. One is called Lies My Government Told Me, and The Better Future Coming.
Thank you.
And also a book that he wrote with his wife called Psy War, which explains, to my mind, many of the phenomena that are going on in the world today and of what's coming. So you really must check out those two books. Also, he mentioned his Substack, which gets over 10 million views each month. So you really should check that out and subscribe. Dr. Malone, it's been our great pleasure once again to sit down with you. Got to learn a bit more about you and your history this time, which was really a joy for me and also I think for our viewers and listeners. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of all that you're doing to sit down with us and spend some time today and have this conversation. God bless you in all of your future endeavors. And thank you once again for being our special guest here today.
Well, thanks for having me on, Leighton. Now I gotta go stack a bunch of hay.